Hello and welcome to another wonderful happening. I have upscaled, as you can see. I have upscaled technology, and I'm now using OBS platform. So please like and share these streams. You'll find them on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Dailymotion, and Facebook. Today I have a wonderful guest. This is, of course, the Inspirational Community Collaboration. It is about presenting people, finding those brilliant, inspirational people, and helping them to translate and bring to the forefront their wisdom for you, their essence, their service, their devotion, which is really what it's all about. Service and devotion, fundamentally. That is what makes joy. That is what makes happiness. Everything else is bullshit. Okay. Maybe not. But anyway, today we have Mr. Love, Mr. Deerheart Love, who's coming on the show. So, without further ado, almost. Deerheart, how are you, Mr. Love?
I'm very good. It's a beautiful day.
It looks beautiful. You're in the hills. You're in the Santa Cruz hills.
I am in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I am.
How wonderful. How wonderful. What, actually, I want to just mute them in case. Okay. So, Mr. Love, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your work. What are you up to at the moment? By the way, have you liked and shared the video?
It is on my Facebook page. So
super. Yeah, I posted it. I think. Anyway, super. Carry on.
I saw you already posted it. So good job.
Yeah, thanks. Well, you can host watch parties and stuff, but you can always do it after. So, Mr. Love, tell us about your work.
My work. It's hard to say where you want to get started. I do a lot of different things. But I am a yoga teacher. I am a men's work facilitator. I'm an educator, speaker, minister. Mm-hmm. So I work in the public schools here. I also have my own coaching business. And it's a little different than life coaching. It's a fulfillment coaching, really helping make sure that people are living a fulfilled life and a happy life, and really being centered and at peace with themselves and with the world that we live in. It's been quite interesting, of course, during this particular times.
What have you found that's the most, that most clients are coming to you with at this time?
I think the uncertainty. There's just a lot of uncertainty right now, and it's created a lot. In some clients, it's created a lot of anxiety, and I think that's been our number one. I'd say that's the number one thing people are working with is anxiety, uncertainty, and anxiety. And obviously you're a musician as well. You do Bhakti music, just like the Bhakti House Band. You do Kirtan. Similar. I was actually thinking that we could even get started by just doing a little Bhakti prayer.
Nice. Absolutely. Yeah. Go for it, and I will see if I can do. Yeah, I can maybe. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I was thinking to invite the beautiful Terry Lee in just to help out for a second. And,
always,
a couple of minutes.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah?
I will.
So I'm going to scoot over here a little bit and make some room.
All right. I'm gonna do a seamless transition again. And put you, Terry Lee. Hello.
Hello.
Such a pleasure. I think Terry Lee is one of the few people who's made me cry playing music.
Oh my gosh.
That's so sweet.
I'm going to mute me as well.
What's that?
He's going to mute himself.
Oh, okay. Very good. So this is just the Gayatri Mantra. We thought it'd be just a really nice thing for everyone to dive into today. Just a little meditation.
dimahi diyo yona prachodayat durvaswa tatsavetu Dimahi diyo yona prachodayat om bhurvasvaha tatsavetu varenyam bhargo devasya dimahi diyo yona prachodayat. Swaha tatsavetu varenyam bhargo devasya dimahi diyo yona prachodayat bhurvasvaha tatsavetu varenyam bhargo devasya dimahi diyo yona
Another seamless transition back to me. I am impressed with myself. That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Thanks so much for Terry Lee for sitting in on that one.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure, Terry Lee.
She's amazing, not only at the violin, but also teaching for the children as well. So.
Terry, snug in closer if you're staying, Terry Lee. Terry Lee, thank you so much. So that was beautiful. Tell us about your experience of sacred music. What's in it for you?
Well, I got introduced to sacred music, probably for the first time at rainbow gatherings. With people sitting around the campfire and singing these old chants that have been around for a really long time that people have made up. And what was really the thing that got me was one night I was at this one fire circle and I didn't know any of the songs that they were singing.
Right.
And this song erupted and it was absolutely gorgeous. And I just stood there in the back, just taking it in. And then in just a few minutes, very few minutes, it's like I knew that song for my entire life. And I just started wailing at the top of my lungs. And I was part of this thing, this happening, and these people. And I didn't even know most of these people. There was a couple of people I had met on the trail, but all of a sudden we were all together.
Yeah.
And it was one of those instrumental moments of my life where I really felt the oneness that people talk about when they talk about that we are all one and all creation is somehow we're all connected. And I actually really, it was just tangible. It was just, I felt a part of all of these people. We were all in the same rhythm, in the same space. We were on key. It was just this beautiful thing. And I was thinking, holy cow, at one point I just kind of stopped and went, I don't, how am I singing this? I don't even know the words to the song. And this went on for some time, and it was just one of those beautiful instrumental moments in my life. And I realized at that point that I just had to have music in my life.
You know, I mean, I laugh really deeply because my first experience of sacred music was also a rainbow gathering, a rainbow festival in Devon. It was my first sort of experience of these weird hippie people. But I also had that same round the campfire. Didn't know anyone there. You know, I'd just gone through a whole lot of trauma, and I found myself there, and I was just... And then there was this devotional music, and it wasn't necessarily mantras, but it was, you know, easy to follow, like, and I felt part of it. I felt I belonged to the community, even though we were strangers. And yeah, I think that's the power of this sort of music. Do you think that other music has that same?
Absolutely. I study a lot of different types of music. And, you know, of course, I grew up in a church where we sang Christian songs. And, you know, those always touched me. And so I think that, and gospel, I love gospel.
Right.
Gospel music is just phenomenal. And I've been able to get down with a gospel choir and just belt it out, you know, and it's just fabulous. My roots, you know, in Kentucky, I came from Kentucky. So, you know, bluegrass is pretty awesome. I think any music that you really just allows you to give yourself to it, really produce that type of attitude or that type of
Right.
experience.
Right.
And I think that's why people love music so much, because it takes us out of our thinking mind, and it really just puts us more in touch with a much more creative, etheric space and a connected space. You know, it helps us to connect. It connects us with our feelings. It connects us with our bodies. It connects us with something higher.
Right.
You know?
I mean, you know, what I've often thought about this in terms of the type of music people listen to at different points in their life. And, you know, like some people, usually teenagers, listen to this sort of like very angry, rocky, like music. And I wonder, first off, if there's any type of music that could be unhelpful to the being.
Right. Well, you know, there was a time where I kind of had that attitude where I thought, oh my gosh, if these people keep listening to this type of music, they're going to just be angry people.
Right.
You know, but really I'm at a place in my spiritual practice where it's about embracing. And it's like, how do I embrace? How do I accept everything in my entire world? You know, and knowing that everything that's here is part of our creation, and we've created it. You know, there's the natural world, of course, but then there's all of what we've made of it and what we make of our lives.
Right.
And it wouldn't be created if it weren't for some way useful to human beings. We wouldn't have brought it into manifestation. So I've actually thought about that, because at the time when my son was going through that angry, angsty space, you know, and he's listening to music that I just couldn't handle, you know, because I'm sitting there, I'm playing like Krishna Das and stuff like that, you know, and
He's playing death metal
or something, and I was just like, wow, okay. But what I did was I took on embracing, and I really tried to do that in every area in my life where I come up against something that's difficult for me or challenging, and I say, okay, how can I embrace this? What can I learn from this? What's the value in this? And what I came up with is that, you know, when a person has a lot of angst, when a person has a lot of anger and deep-rooted emotion about things in life, and they haven't worked it all out yet, that music really helps them. And I think that it's a release, it's a connection and a release. And I think that music is good in that way. And I would rather have them out on the dance floor, shaking it out and getting mad and stomping and doing whatever they need to do with that kind of music than going out and hurting somebody.
Right, absolutely.
Or having that anger come out inappropriately and wrecking a relationship or a family or, you know, that kind of stuff. So
yeah. I mean, I think you put it beautifully there. It's like it's got a role and it needs to be expressed. The feelings need to be expressed. And if you're being called to a certain type of music, then that's your feelings trying to be heard, trying to be expressed. I suppose it's like anything, everything in moderation. If you get stuck on something, stuck in a kind of a rut of, because I mean, you know, there are people who are angry and they might think that going around shouting at people is processing their anger because they're expressing it. How do you find this sort of work translates to kids? How do they understand this sort of integration talk?
Well, you know, I think that it's not necessarily something that's talked about scientifically with kids. Kids are so special, like so simple, you know, so we always have to try to find a nice, simple way to interface with the kids. Right now, I've been doing at-risk youth counseling and mentoring and working in the public schools, going into the middle schools especially, and working with these boys. We also do an at-risk youth adventure out program. So we're taking them out into nature, doing wilderness skills, rocks, ropes, kayaks, canoes, things to get them interested and out of their element. And then also later on, we can bring those kids up into the Teen Rites of Passage program. But as far as how do you work with where they're at? How do you deal with the anger? How do you deal with all those things? It's really creating the space for them to let it out. Like when I first thought about mentoring, I thought about it because I said, wow, you know, I'm a man who's had a lot of experience in the world. I've done so many different things. I've studied multiple religions and spiritual practices, traditions, self-help systems, traveled 17 countries, 43 U.S. states. You know, I've been in a lot of places and I've had a lot of experience. So I thought, you know, I would be a great mentor because I could give some really great advice, right? And so then I got into mentorship training and found out that the biggest part of the training was training us not to give advice.
Right.
So I was like, what? We're not going to give them advice? I was like, wait a minute. Well, then what are we there for? So as it turns out, what we're there for is we're there to listen. Because most of these kids don't have anybody to talk to about anything real. Right. They're afraid to talk to each other. They're afraid to talk to their parents. They may have only one parent instead of two. They may be being raised by foster parents. But the things that they're facing today, the problems and the issues and the things that are oftentimes even borderline suicidal or that direction, because by the way, we do have the highest suicide rate, teen suicide rate in the history of our country right now. So there are real problems that can manifest into very serious issues and actions on the parts of the children. So just having someone to talk to, someone to unload what it is that they're working with and dealing with and holding on to is absolutely crucial and probably the most important thing I can do as a mentor.
Do you how do you feel the school system helps with or hinders that? I mean, it's, you know, when I was in school, and I think the same as today, it was very patriarchal. I went to a private school as well, so it was all very in England, you know, and so it was all very like, teacher says, students shut up and listen, and it was just that patriarchal thing. I mean, outside the obvious Montessori and the Steiner style, do you see the school systems are evolving? Are they changing?
I would like to hope that people are evolving.
Nice.
You know, so even if the system itself isn't evolving, I'll probably raise for debate whether or not the system itself is evolving or devolving. As far as like with each administration, each new system that keeps being brought to us as the new system for the kids. I see it really taking away more and more art, takes more and more music out of the programs, less and less intuitive things, more math, and more all cognitive skill stuff, and then bringing computers further and further down. You know, they started out in 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. Now they're wanting to bring computers into kindergarten, you know, these kinds of things. Whereas I fully do adhere to like Steiner philosophy. And I do believe that there needs to be this time at our younger years where we really allow our children to explore the inner space and the creative space, and to be able to play and to create things from imagination. Because all the things that we have in the world today were all created by someone's imagination.
Right.
And so when I was growing up, all the things that we played, all the games that we made up, was all from our imagination. And now those people have become the great minds that have created the computers of today, that work at Apple and all these different places, right? And that create all of these systems. All these games that are being played today are being created by the people that we grew up with.
Right.
The creative. But what I see on the playground now, when I was doing my early childhood education observations, and I went around to different schools to observe the grade schools and the kindergartens, including I went all the way to Stuttgart, Germany, to do an observation at the Waldorf school there. What I see, not necessarily at the Waldorf school, but what I saw in the public school counterparts, is I saw the kids not making up anything at playtime. I saw them not doing anything imaginative, but that they were acting out everything they saw on a screen, on television. They all the characters that they made up were actually characters that already existed that someone else made up. They were just playing them out, and they were actually would get into fights as to who said what. No, the one girl would say, "No, she didn't say it like that," and it was a sad moment for me, because I remember when I was a kid, we made up our own characters.
Right.
There would be no fight about who said what, because we were making it up as we went. Yeah.
So what do parents do now? I mean, they're all stuck at home. And by the way, this conversation is so similar to the one I had with Kristen and Randall. And Kristen's also an early childhood educator. So you and the Bhakti House are going to have some fun together. But what can parents do? Now they're stuck at home. They've got the kids. What are some things that they can really do? Obviously, they can go out into nature, and if they can get out somewhere local, you can't really drive anywhere. So what can they do with their kids to both inspire them and not drive the parents insane?
Right. That's a really good question, and that's something that's being asked all over the place.
Right.
What can parents do? Of course, luckily here in Santa Cruz, they've opened the parks back up again, so getting back out into nature is absolutely a crucial thing.
Right.
Plus, I see too many kids like this, I really like to see the kids get back out connecting with nature. We have some of the most beautiful nature, in the United States right here. So that's a super important thing. One of the things that we're doing with Boys to Men, which is the program that helps us interface with the schools, is that we're setting up now Zoom for the youth. So these kids that we've been working with at the middle school level, we're actually going to have Zoom programs for them where they can come in. So it's like part of their school day, because all their classes are now on Zoom, and so we've got an actual slot right on in there.
Great.
So we're just waiting for approval for that to come through. It should come through in the next week or so, and then we're going to have Zoom classes for them. But I'd say just plugging in with anything creative, get your kids into arts and crafts. Those are things. Get them working with their hands. Do your very best to just get them off of the computers and the handheld games, and just really get them working with their hands. And there's a lot of resources, incredible amount. If you really want to look, we have an incredible internet resource library, and there's a lot of things that you can either do with things that you already have here at home, or there's also there's books and things that you can purchase that will help support you into doing crafts with your kids, and very simple things that you could easily get. Yeah,
takes a bit of time in the setup, but it's very rewarding on the out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, great. So, you do this devotional music, you do the mentoring for kids, and you mentor also adults.
Yes.
What do you find the difference? The main difference? I mean, I heard you saying that the kids want a space to be heard. But isn't that just what adults want anyway?
Yeah, on some level, we all want to be heard, don't we? Doesn't everybody?
I definitely could do a joke at this point. What was that? But I'm not going to do it. I'm not. Or did I just do it by reference? No.
Everybody wants to be heard. And what I've found is that when working with people, 90% of it is really listening. So taking that mentoring training and taking it into working with adults, it's the same thing. People want to be heard. Now, there's being heard, and then there's getting to the bottom of things. And so we need to be able to do that as adults as well. With children, what we found is that we don't have to do a lot of getting to the bottom of things, because the bottom is pretty shallow.
Right.
They're just kids. They haven't had a lot of patterns and conditions and years of trauma and baggage. With adults, it's a little bit different. We don't do therapy, and I'm not licensed as a therapist.
Right.
But as a coach, what we do is we give people an opportunity to speak, be heard. We also teach listening skills, because if you don't have anybody listening, it's hard to be heard.
Right.
So, really attentive listening is something that a lot of people don't do. You would think that it would come naturally, but I think over the years of just being untrained or trained to be the one who speaks or the one who always knows, or thinking about what it is you're going to say in a rebuttal, or
right.
Rather really being with what that person has to say, and taking that in, not having any thoughts while they're actually speaking, not judging it, not quantifying it, not thinking about what you're going to say.
Right.
But if you're actually just listening fully, trust that when they're done, you can pause for as long as you want,
right,
to really get what they said, and then know what it is you need to say back,
right,
and it'll come to you.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have never had training like that.
No.
It's instrumental in conversations. It's absolutely fabulous. It's definitely communication 101. And wouldn't that be wonderful if we actually taught that in our schools?
Absolutely. I mean, there has to be a certain amount of trust in the listening, trust that you're going to hear and retain and be able to come up with a response. The thing that's come up in some of these conversations before is this notion of speed of response. It's like society has kind of trained us to think that how the speed at which you respond is really an indication of how smart you are and how clever you are and how correct you are. That.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested in what are the aspects that support your need to be fast with the aspects that encourage you to take a pause. What are the things there that influence that?
Well, it's interesting because, and I agree with you actually. My assessment, if I was to figure, to look at it, I would say yes. Our society is pushing for fast, quick. When you look at these shows on television these days, it's all about being the quick, fast, witty one who has the comeback that just slices your head off.
In fact, that's what my brother thinks I should do with this. He's like, you shouldn't have these long conversations. You should just have, what have you got to say? No, that's rubbish. Cut. Next person. And it's like, because he's in the film industry. So he's in the entertainment industry. And he's thinking exactly like that. Faster, quicker.
Well, yeah. Well, it supports an ADD culture. And I think that's what we're moving toward. We're wanting to support the ADD culture rather than actually do anything about healing it. Mm-hmm. And, and that's what starting by giving the drugs to the kids when they're young, putting them on Ritalin and all these things. I think what we're trying to do is we're masking problems rather than dealing with their underlying issue. What's the underlying cause? And so we're creating, and then we're supporting that to be, well, that's the new norm. So let's go ahead and produce all of our television, movies, and everything to support this new culture where people can't be focused for more than 18 seconds. Yeah. So it's a tragedy, because if you take a look at some of the old movies, Gone with the Wind, and these kinds of films, you've got these long sweeping scenes
Mm.
where you really get to know people. You get to feel the depth of conversation and how people related to one another and spoke to one another
Right.
and were with each other. And you got to really take in the scene and the scenery, and all of that gave you information, right? And information about how you were going to feel about something. Today, it's just bam, click, click, click. It's just going from scene to scene to scene to scene. I feel like I'm attention deficit just by watching today's films.
Yeah. You know, it also reminds me a little bit of, you know, I don't know what job interviews used to do, but when I came out of uni, I did a couple of job interviews, and some of them were practical tests where they, you know, have like 20 people and they say, right, here's a task. I'm going to split you in half. This group A does this group and this group B does, and then they pit the groups against each other, and then they give you a puzzle to solve, but they don't really give a shit about the puzzle. They're looking at your communication skills and your interactive skills, and it's almost like society in general, especially Western society, is losing the point of living for the journey. It's like they're trying to get to the end somewhere,
Right.
as opposed to enjoying the dance.
Right. It's about the goal.
Do you think that this COVID situation is helping people now to move away from that goal-orientated, endlessly dissatisfying approach?
I would hope so. You know, I believe that there's a lot of really great things that are coming out of this. I think we needed to have some type of a disruption that was going to have us take a look at things. And that's really super important. We're always wondering what's going to happen. It can't keep going. You know, how many conversations I've had with people where it didn't matter what walk of life they were from, what economic status they were from, what their religious background or ethnicity. It didn't matter. People from all walks of life, all over the world that I've spoken with, have all said similar things like, how long can this go on this way? Because things are not balanced. It's not quite right. Something's not you know, in alignment, right? And so here we've had this incredible disruption worldwide. And it's really an opportunity for us to really take stock. You know, I love that word, taking stock, like to really take stock of ourselves, to really take a look in, see, how have I been? How have I been acting? How has everything brought me to where it is that I am now? And what do I want to really do with the rest of my life?
Right.
You know, I've got these eyes, I've got these hands, I've got this body, I've got this ability to be alive and to affect life. What do I want to do while I'm here in the precious time that I'm here, which could be such a fleeting moment, right?
Right. So, okay, so then people, you know, they look at this and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to change my situation, but I feel so angry. I'm angry at the situation. I'm angry at, you know, my mum who's now dead, and, you know, all these things that they feel disempowered. They don't feel able to alter. What advice would you give them?
There we go with that advice thing, right?
Yeah.
So
what wisdom would you share with them?
Inherently for myself, the best that I can do is to face whatever challenges before me with as wide open eyes as I possibly can, and to really take it in. Do my very best to understand it, the situation, understand my feelings about it, and understand then what to do next. But it always comes from accepting the situation, facing the situation, and being with it as objectively as absolutely possible for us to find the solutions. But the first step is really just being with whatever it is that we are having a difficult time with, whatever makes us angry, whatever we have resistance to.
Right.
We have to be with it, or we have no chance to work with it in a positive way.
Absolutely. There's a bit of a paradox for people who aren't familiar with this way of non-duality, which is, okay, so I'm feeling angry, so I'm supposed to accept that, but also I want the anger to go. So I accept and I want it to go. People don't know how to be those simultaneously.
Yeah, it's really tough. But once you accept that you're angry, then you can find a way for it to go. And that's getting more into therapy, but there are definitely things that people can do. I mean, I know what I do. Sometimes if it's really, really bad, I just drive down the road in my car, just screaming my head off.
Drive into a tree. Yeah.
That way, I don't scare anybody.
It seems like there's this element of the bark's worse than the bite. You're more afraid of the fear than the thing itself. How much do you find in your experience of surrendering into your truth? How much do you find that you're...
that's it. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine about that the other day, and they were just so afraid, and it was so scary, and it just dawned on me that in my experience, once you've brought the boogeyman, so to speak, out of the closet and into the light, it's usually not as bad as what you thought it was. Right. And so it was the case with my friend as well. Like I said, it's probably not as bad as you. I was like, why don't you just lay it on, and we took a look at it, and with a fresh pair of eyes, coming from a different place, not being triggered, not being rooted in that person's trauma, I was able to make a joke about it and make light of their boogeyman, to where they saw their boogeyman in a different light and realized that their boogeyman wasn't so bad after all. Now I'm not wanting to belittle anyone's trauma. I mean, people have really deep and really terrible traumas out there. I had one when I was a child as well that I had to heal from. So I don't want to discount that at all. But at the same time, it's in the how we're facing it and how we're dealing with it. And are we wanting to be a victim and just drag that thing along with us as the worst thing that's ever happened and give us, permission to have terrible lives and treat people badly and, not be responsible for our actions and all those kinds of things? Or are we willing to really take a look at it and do something about it?
I suppose, finding the first step seems to be the decision, deciding that you're courageous enough to face your truth, like claiming it.
Absolutely.
And then, maybe then it's like you were for your friend, finding a confidant, someone that you can act as a mirror towards. I mean, I know obviously when people have to face mirrors, that's when the real fear comes out, because they start to see the truth.
Right.
What else can people like? What else can people do to enable them to surrender further in, so that there can be a further growth?
Well, that embracing process takes a lot of courage, especially for the stuff that's really scary. And of course, your what you just hit was the big nail right there, which is people are afraid to look at themselves, take responsibility for their actions and what they've done. And so that's huge for folks.
Right.
What can they do? Ultimately the embracing process starts with just them saying yes.
Right.
I want to do something differently.
Yeah.
I'm really ready to be free of this. It's been causing breakdown in my life forever, for my whole life.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt anybody anymore. I really want to feel connection. I'd like to have better relationships. It really comes from a place of sometimes desperation. Sometimes we have to get to that really desperate place of, I just can't go on like this. Is just not okay.
Right.
But we can't be in denial of it. There's those who are in denial, and, all your friends and family tell you how you're showing up, but you just can't hear it. It's still always everybody else's problem.
Right.
It's always somebody else, right? So the first step is not being in denial, and definitely just willing to take a look at yourself and say, I got some stuff I could really clean up here. And I think that I'd like to take some steps in doing that. And then, of course, the next steps are racing and such and whatnot. Getting a coach, getting into a men's circle, a woman's circle where people are doing really good work
Right.
and it's healthy.
Right.
Getting a good therapist.
Yeah.
I love Hakomi.
Yeah, the circles seem to be good because, I mean, when I think about it, like, why are people afraid to take responsibility? And ultimately, it seems like it's because they're afraid of being rejected by others for what they did. And so tell us about the work with circles, because I think that's an element of that bypasses that fear of rejection.
Great. So working with circles, circles are great because if you got a good circle of people and everyone's there and committed to the same thing, and I think that's what's really important, right? No matter what circle you be a part of, you've got to make sure that everyone's there for the same reason. Like they're really committed to the same foundational principles. So that's kind of circles that I hold. Everyone's there. There's a set of standards and principles that everyone agrees with, so we can have a foundation to move forward together. And from that place, some really amazing things can happen. One of them is very simply for men, commitment and accountability. I mean, how crucial. With men, if we can't be committed, we can't get anything done. No one can trust us, and we're not going to follow through with anything we say. Without accountability, we can't hold men accountable for what it is that they're saying that they're going to do or what they say. And so we have to have accountability. So just that alone, if a circle has that much integrity that they can hold commitment and accountability super high up on their priority list, then you've got the makings of a pretty good circle right there.
And you think it's different for women's circles? There's something fundamentally different for men's circles and women's?
The women's circles, there is something fundamentally different, and that is the fact that women use both hemispheres of their brain and are really great multitaskers, and they're much more, I would say, now I'm just talking scientifically here.
Right.
Scientifically are more apt to be in touch with and understand their emotions and their connection to everything and to each other. Like there is a scientific basis behind all of that. It's not a bias of men or women. It's just that women over thousands of years have developed the ability to use both hemispheres of their brain simultaneously, which is very rare in the men.
Yeah.
So because of that, women have a different set of skills that are available to them.
Right.
A different set of let's just call it feeling functionality, right? And so their meetings are oftentimes going to be a lot more feeling based and emotionally based and working with those kinds of things. Whereas with my men's circles, we're going to be working more with commitment and accountability.
Yeah. I suppose, it makes sense in terms of where the women, what they were doing, while men were out on their single task hunting the animals or whatever. They had to be focused like ninjas. No distractions, no multitasking. Whereas women were developing culture and language and children, and they all had to understand the holistic picture. So not only is it a biological thing potentially, but it's also a culturally epigenetic thing that's been encoded into our systems. Yeah, it
is, and we may not realize it that we work from these things, but it's the age-old debate: nature or nurture. Well, so when I was in school studying nature and nurture, I easily came up to the conclusion it's both. Our environment definitely helps shape us. Yeah. My DNA definitely helps shape.
Right.
So when we look back at thousands of years of culture development, and just as you said, the women were developing language. The women noticed the sun and the moon and the stars and developed astrology, understood the relationship between the moon and the sun and the earth, and actually became the first ones to plant gardens. And so it moved us from being, hunter-gatherers to actually farming. That was the women. The women came up with music. The women came up with so many things, almost everything we do today, like mathematics, because they were able to count. They started counting the days of their moon cycles and how their menstrual cycles
Right.
were in alignment with the cycles of the moon. And so the counting started happening and started creating calendars and all these kinds of things, all attributed to the women. They did so much for us that way.
I like to think that there is a turnaround point from this patriarchal dominating, burning of the witches, destroying of the muses, building Notre Dame on top of Isis temples, stuff like that. There's a turnaround, the reemergence of the muse, reemergence of the sacred feminine. How do you do you feel that also?
Absolutely. I think that it's a crucial time for the women to lead. I think that's really super important. Our culture generally has lost touch with compassion and the kindness, the generosity. Women for ages have been the nurturers. All the women are coming from all the people on the earth come from the women, right?
Right.
The women birth everybody that's on the planet. So, in American Indian culture, even if the chief and all the braves thought it was a good idea to go to war, the grand matriarch, the grandma could say absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because she was connected with whether it's the best thing for all of her children, right? And so by the women stepping up and leading with that mentality of being connected with all of the children, because all the children are the women's children, everybody on the planet. There's not one of us that didn't come through a woman.
Right.
So that's really crucial and important. However, what we need women leaders who are actually feminine. They're
Right.
connected with that feminine principle and
Right.
that power, and not women leaders who are just trying to act like men.
Right. Like Clinton.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the politics of it all.
But
names necessarily.
Yeah, but I grew up with Margaret Thatcher and
Right.
and my mother, both of whom are very powerful, independent women who I call them 80s power women. They basically rebelled after the 60s freedom revolution. They rebelled and were like, fine then, you want us to be fucking play your game? We'll play your game and we'll do it better than you. And they go and they destroy all the men. And the men are like, what? But I think that it's at a great cost. Even though it was necessary, that society saw that women could embody that Kali masculine destruction phase. I'm now excited to, as you put it, see the birth of the integrated feminine being.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make them soft.
That's really in touch with the feminine power, because see, there's masculine power and power, and somehow in our culture today, in our race for equality, which is absolutely crucial, we have to have equality, equal rights, absolute 100%. Yeah. We need equal rights, but somehow in our pursuit of equal rights, we've come up with this idea that we're the same.
Right.
We're not the same.
Right.
Don't homogenize us. There's actually strength in our diversity.
Right.
Our diversity will give us incredible power. And masculine power manifests differently than feminine power. And we need both of those powers present to have balance in the world. And, I think that's an absolutely crucial thing that gets overlooked. And something that's really important, and since we're on this subject, is there's this new concept out there where people are taking the word toxic and they're putting it with the word masculine or feminine, like toxic masculinity, toxic femininity.
I've heard it.
And I'm really concerned about this, because what that does is it disenfranchises us from the purity and the power and the beauty and the strengths and all the gifts that masculinity gives us and that femininity gives us.
Right.
And femininity and masculinity cannot and are not toxic in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And so I had this argument in a very important forum amongst leaders here in Santa Cruz. And so somebody said, well, well, how do you explain when men abuse their power and rape and do this and they pillage and destruction and all this? Isn't this toxic masculinity? And I said, well, there's nothing masculine about it at all.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I said, no, it's not even it's not masculine at all. I said, so when you've got children that are pre-puberty and those children act, are they having power? Do they have power? Do children have power? You bet that they do. Children have power. Is it inherently masculine or feminine? No, it's power. Okay. So I said, what we've got is we've got men who have not gone through an initiation process to become men. So they're boys still.
Right.
So these boys have grown up and they now have men's bodies. They have men's strength. They have men's intellect. They have men's bank accounts and daddy behind them and a lineage of people or whatever they have, right?
Right.
But they're not men. They're boys in men's bodies acting from an arrested state of adolescent development, wielding power inappropriately. But that is not masculine.
Right.
Because the masculine principle is about justice. It's about fairness. It's about commitment. It's about honor. It's about integrity. And it's about taking care of those that are weaker than yourself. That is the masculine principle. So when men are in their masculine principle, all of those things aren't happening at all.
So this notion of power, you can have power in the masculinity or power in the femininity, right?
Absolutely.
And obviously people get confused thinking that masculinity means men. It's not that, because you can have two homosexual partners, two women or two men or two trans or whatever, and they can still be embodying the unity of opposites. It's yin yang is maybe a more neutral way to talk of it.
Absolutely. I had my very first men's team back in the 90s. I had a homosexual man on that team, and it was on that team of men that he came out of the closet, because back then it was really not something that it was very difficult for men to come out of the closet.
It wasn't cool back then.
Yeah, exactly. And so, because of, and every other man on that team was heterosexual. But the safety that we held and created in that container, that homosexual man felt comfortable coming out of the closet with all of these heterosexual men. So, and we loved him and he loved us. And we did work together for as long as that team was together for 2 years. Weekly we met. And those principles and the principles we studied, when we talked about masculine and feminine, or we started talking about men and women, if a man was speaking and he was talking men or women, then our friend just interpreted that for himself. Instead of hearing men or women, he heard masculine or feminine.
Right.
And it worked for him. So it's the same technology that was working for the heterosexual people was working for the homosexual man. So, and then he started working with his community that way and saying, oh my gosh, we've got these principles that you're holding for men and women. He said, but it completely applies in our relationships as well. Right. Because at any point in time, one of us is exhibiting masculine behavior and one of us is exhibiting feminine behavior.
Right. And it might switch.
And we both have an orientation.
Yeah.
And the reason for this is because it's about polarity.
Right.
It goes back to science again. See, I love to mix science and reality and spirituality, all of it together. It's all the same. It's all just tools for us to understand our world. Yes. But we have to have polarity in order for things to work.
And the unification.
People's relationships and make them the same, the men and the women, the masculine and feminine, there's no spark. There's nothing there for them to hold on to. Right. The relationship dissolves and fades away. But if the man has really got a point of connection with the masculine, the woman has a point of connection with the feminine, then there's this difference And because of like the battery, the positive and negative, you've got this polarity
and
that causes the attraction.
And there's both in each.
That's right. Absolutely.
And in a sense, the partners together will be, when they fit well, will be counterbalancing each other's display of masculinity and femininity, yin and yang. Whereas one partner might be, of the 4 I've got to spend, I might be 3 masculine and 1 feminine. And then the other partner to match that would be the inverse. And that way there's a better fit. Now I'm butchering it in terms of the beauty of it, but there is something to be said for the element of meeting someone where they are, but in bringing a space to the thing that they're bringing to it. It's kind of like homeopathy. In homeopathy, you put inside the thing that's not there, the space of the thing that you want to take out. So it's like you come up with I try and spirit like a jelly mold. What do you call it? Jello. A jello mold, like a spaceship jello mold. But that's not a spaceship. That's a space that the spaceship fits into. And so you pour the jelly in and it becomes the spaceship. But the mold is the whole. It's the space for it. So meeting people where they are with enough space to hold all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Creates
this union, this yoga.
Absolutely. In a relationship, you have to meet, and that brings us back to how we speak with people, how you meet people, how you hold them. Are you having space for them to be themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Or you've already got judgments and preconceptions and all this baggage and stuff you're projecting upon them?
Right.
And we do that in our relationships as well. And we see the good in somebody, or we see where they could transform to, and we're thinking, oh, they're going to be a really great person after just a year or two of work, and oh, this will be a perfect partner for me if only they just do this,
they were different,
or they do that, or they do this work on themselves, or they have a year therapy, or they change this or change that. But are we really being with exactly how the person is in that moment of the meeting,
right, and
accepting them 100%, because that's unconditional love, and that's the only time you're going to get what you're going to know what you get. Yeah. Because all the rest of it's a crapshoot, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So you can't be projecting anything on them or what they may or may not do in the future, because that may never happen, right?
Exactly.
So it's not even fair for them or for you to hold those kind of expectations on somebody. No expectations, that's it.
Yeah.
So we're going to just meet. It's like, you are how you are, I am how I am.
Right.
We either connect on that level or we don't, and that's okay.
It's okay.
We don't have to do anything else.
Right.
It's like, what's the actual natural relationship that we can have given our orientation?
Yeah.
And when we're talking about a man and a woman, or a partnership between 2 men or two women, it doesn't matter. Both people need to hold each other from that place. And I used to believe in this idea of the better half, or whatever, that whole concept of 2 halves make a whole.
Right.
But as I've studied this more and more and more, and actually worked with lots of couples over time, what I've actually found is that what we need to do is be whole ourselves.
Right.
We each have to be whole in ourselves. So if I'm whole and you're whole, and we come together, we're 2 wholes. We're not looking to fulfill each other. It's not like I'm missing something. I need that from you.
Yeah.
It's like, I have what I need and you have what you need, but our unique differences create a diversity that gives us strengths that's beyond the sum of our individual parts.
Absolutely.
So we create this new thing called the relationship.
Right.
That's bigger than us.
Yeah.
And we feed that, and we can go somewhere where we can't go by ourselves.
Absolutely.
But that takes 2 very whole, healed individuals coming together for something greater.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. We're reaching the end of the show, or we've kind of already got there, but there's so much to talk about. That's like Rono and Sierra from the Eden Project. You should check them out. They say, I got me, you got you, we got we. And
nice.
And it comes to this notion of the 3 being the smallest number, the you, the not you, and then the me, the you, not you. Unity,
Yes.
the triad together. There's so much magic to be held. Oh, what did I want to say before we went? First off, thank you. What a lovely time. I could talk for hours more. I wanted to share something I noticed that I did in relationships, in that bringing expectations to the front of relationships. I find myself here, you know, I'm going through the burn like everyone is, but I find myself here, you know, with Z talking, and I say things like, yeah, you always, like if she lies on the couch here, whatever, and she goes, oh, I'll get up in a minute. I say, you never get up. If you go to sleep now, you'll be there all night. You never get up. Even something as simple as that. I'm trying to get her to bed, right? But the point that I come and I make the projection that never happens, it's coming with an expectation that limits the evolution of the person in front of you. I mean, how can they, and where can they go with that? With their partner, their beloved, telling them there's the limit. You're stuck in it. So anyway, I wanted to share that bit of vulnerability.
I appreciate that. Do I have 30 seconds for a closing remark?
Absolutely. And I also want to know, close remark.
Okay, great. I just wanted to kind of wrap it back around. You know, we talked about going into this COVID thing and how people are dealing with it and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I just really would love to see that as we're taking stock of ourselves, like we talked about earlier, that we're really finding the things that are most important to us, so that as we're coming out of these shelter in place, lockdown, whatever your particular vicinity, community is doing, that we're coming out and realizing what's really important. And I'm hoping that that's connection. And I think that it's going to be very important that children are playing together, that we don't have to live in a world of masks and not being able to see each other smile,
right.
That we're not afraid to die, that it's better to have a longer, it's better to have a shorter quality life than a long life of isolation and separatism.
Yeah.
So, I know personally, I just want to have a really long, a powerful, quality life of connection, and where I'm personally connected to you and myself and to this nature and all of these things. And however long that is,
yes,
so be it.
Excellent.
And die well, rather than a long life of seclusion and being separate from everything. So I'm hoping people are going to make really good decisions coming out of this, and we're creating a new world together.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on, Deerheart. Where can people find you? Are you doing online stuff?
I think the easiest way to find me is www.livingdevotion.org. And that's where we put up our monthly music offerings. That is a link also to my ministry and all the things that I do there and working with people. So you can always find me there.
And Terry, and you can find Terry Lee there as well.
Terry Lee, yeah, you can always email us there at Living Devotion and get a message to the beautiful Miss Terry Lee.
Wonderful. Oh, Deerheart, thank you so much for coming on, brother. It's been great. I'm going to connect you up to the Bhakti House Band. Because, I mean, you've so much in common. I'll just... I
really appreciate being on your show. Thank you. Absolutely,
man. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I'll just close up the show. Thank you for coming. Thank you to my guests, Deerheart, Dr. Mr. Love, Kristen and Randall Brooks, the Bhakti House Band. Please do tune in, like, share this video, subscribe on YouTube. It's the first one going live onto YouTube. Handbrake and all that stuff. I don't know, other places. Anyway, every day we're doing these shows. So lots of love. Thank you. Like, share, all that stuff. You want to get in touch with me, Markabadi. As my father always tells me, I've got a book. It's called Book Evolve, bookevolve.com. Check it out. You can find me, markabadi.com. Until then, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. Thank you, OBS, for having an open source system. I will see you all tomorrow. Much love. Aloha.